Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the MSI GTX 1080 Ti. Now, this was going to be a review that I wasn't going to do because MSI asked me last week. They said, can you review this? And I was honest with him and I went, probably not, because I have so much on at the moment. And they said, you know, we really need something done. Can you turn it around really quick for us? And I was like, you're just making it worse. Even if you sent it now, I'm probably not going to get to it for a good few weeks at least, because I do have a list as long as something I wish was long. Anyway, so essentially what I've decided to do, because to be honest, yes, I don't have time to do it. I know you lot are going to want me to at least have a quick look. So I've decided to give it a quick review. Maybe this will be something that we're going to do in future. And I'm hoping when you see the way that I've done it at the end, I don't think we're going to be missing too much. Anyway, but it's an £800 card and it's got normal clocks of 1544 and then boost clocks of 1658. But if we have a look at the card, and then we'll talk a little bit more in a minute. I know in the box is normally boring, but I've tried to do it really quick. You do get these stickers, so you can stick them all over your rig if you want. I'd like to think that you put them in your room or something rather than put them on your rig, but each to their own. There is a comic book. I'm assuming they think, because it shows you how to fit your graphics card, I think they're assuming that this graphics card is going to be bought by all of the parents, and then given to 8 and 10 and maybe 12-year-old children to fit their £800 graphics cards themselves. I don't get that at all. Anyway, then you get your warranty thing, your manual, your driver disc. But don't forget, when it comes to the driver disc, peeps, just go to the nVidia website and download the very latest driver that you can from their website, rather than using the one that comes in this. Okay? So, the up-close view. Sadly, yes, it is still black and red, and these do light up red as normal. This is RGB though, but the combination of the red and the RGB, it's all been said before. It's not that easy to mod either. This bit of plastic will come off so you can paint this, but then you still get left with these red lights that poke through, and I did think that you'd be able to dismantle it and to at least remove the red. They're bonded in, there's no way to do it. I've looked because I wanted to paint one white in the past, so it's black and red. So if you don't like black and red, then it's not the card for you. It is a 2.5 slot though, so it's got a little bit more depth. They've made these fins a little bit thicker. So that's something I'll show you in the strip down in a moment. 2x8 pins, so you've got plenty of power. You've got a nice back plate, nice subtle dragon logo on the back. Actually quite like this side of things. I mean, if that was the view that you were going to get in your car, in your system, it wouldn't be too bad. I know predominantly you do see that, but it's just the extra ready bits and the red lights and stuff. You can, if you don't like the lights, and it's the lights that will be the final thing that makes your decision, and you can remove the connector for the lights. It's one of these two around here. I think it's the black and red one. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's the black and red one. If you were to pop that off, then you can just turn the lights off altogether and you never have to worry about them. Something I will say to you before I pop the cooler off is there's an unwritten rule with MSI that yes, it does have a warranty sticker, but if you were to remove the cooler to put a water block on or to change the thermal paste, then as long as you don't break anything physical underneath, then your warranty will stand and they will honour it. But if you've taken it off and you've pinged a capacitor or anything like that, and that's the reason for you RMAing it, then you won't, they won't stand to your warranty. So if you have like a RAM chip failure because it's, you know, for whatever, or the core goes for whatever reason, as long as it's not something stupid like overheating because you forgot thermal paste, and it is just a death of a component for, you know, natural reasons, we shall say, then yes, they will still honour your warranty. So GeForce GTX on the side again. I swear now everyone is putting something GeForce GTX on the side of their cards. So I think nVidia are now getting funny and they want people to be able to distinguish between the AMD cards and the nVidia cards, because let's face it, if that wasn't on there, we could have been talking about a new Vega card. We could have been talking about a you know, one of the other ones. Do you know what I mean? Take your pick. So yeah, there is a decent brace all the way down the side. You'll see underneath as well, but the card kind of all interlocks together. There's a lot of screws and stuff as well, but it does mean there's a fair bit of rigidity there. But because there's quite a bit of weight as well, then you kind of need it. When we get round the back, there are 2 HDMIs if you are a VR-er, and then there are 2 display ports, and then you've got your normal DVI at the top here. I personally think that the DVR should just die a death now, because it's quite easy to get digital to analog adapters, or you can get DisplayPort to DVI adapters. You can do it that way round, do you know what I mean? So it's, yeah, you can do it if you want to. 2 SLI notches up here. Obviously, if you're going to run 2 of them, you're going to have a high bandwidth bridge, so that's why there's 2. But I've tested a couple of these cards in a previous review, and the games are hit and miss. Most of the new ones don't particularly like 2 cards very much. Anyway, so big thick card. I wonder what it's like underneath. So with it all dismantled, this is what we are greeted with, and all of these screws, all of them, did bolt right the way through the card as well. So it ended up being really strong. It either went into this supporting plate here, which also cools the memory underneath, which I will show you, or they bolted straight in to the back of the actual cooler itself, which is, well, this part's cooling the power regs, but we will get there. So there is the back of the cooling plate. You can see where all the memory should be. It's just there. We've just got the thermal pads over the top. I don't want to take them all off just to show you, because you do get the idea. You can see the odd couple of thermal pads there. Something to point out as well is they've put a thermal pad on even where the missing one was. You can see the very neat power regs. You've got the MOSFETs on this side, then you've got the chokes, and you've got a bank of capacitors. Weirdly, these 2 capacitors do not have the thermal pad on. Now that thermal pad does come into contact with this part of the cooler itself, so I don't know whether these 2 are powering the memory or something. I genuinely don't know. But they've obviously not done it for a reason, because it's all very tidy, and I would assume that these bits of thermal pad are going to be all individually cut, so that, you know, they're not going to cut them each time that they have to do them. There was quite a lot of thermal paste around the actual chip itself, and when I took it off there was an awful lot on there. So I don't know whether they're measuring it out or they're just guesstimating it each time they fit it. Anyway, so we can see that the card is very big. You can see that the thickness is quite huge really when it comes out. The actual, that's the where you would normally screw your card in, so you can see how extra wide it is. PCB itself is a very nice matte, and it's all actually very tidy and all well laid out. Sometimes when you look at graphics cards, they can all be a bit messy and jumbled, but this is kind of pleasing, is the best way I can explain it. When we do get to the cooler itself though, one of the things I will say is this section is actually really nice to see. Now this is the power reg section, but what it does mean, I know we had the chokes and the capacitors touch here, but you can see the main metal bit here. This is going to be cooling the MOSFETs, which is the dark grey, and then the light grey are these little components down here. I actually don't know what they would be. I'm sure someone would be able to tell me. Anyway, the fact that they come in direct contact with the cooler, because it's all built in, is a really nice touch. And I've not seen MSI go to this much trouble for a cooler since the 290X. Now, to be honest with you, the MSI 290X, MSI Gaming 290X, is probably the best 290X on the planet. Their cooler was far superior to any of the other ones. I do mean any of them, it really didn't even come close. Now we know that it was a 2.5 slot cooler, and that's because we do have all this extra girth with the fins. You can actually see an extra heat pipe that comes around here as well. So they've gone to a fair bit of effort down this end, but like I've already said, this end is the business end of the card, where you can see they've gone to much more effort. This is obviously going to be where the power connectors are, but it's I know it only seems like a small thing, but quite often this isn't here, and whatever's underneath it is just having air blown over it by the fan. So for direct contact, all that extra cooling, I know it's only an extra plate and some slight change in the fins, but it does make a big difference to the amount of effort and time that goes into them as well. So I'm pretty impressed with it stripped down. So on to the bit I'm hoping we can condense and get through relatively quickly. The cards, to be fair, the only difference really between the 1080 Ti's is going to be the cooler and then the clocks. And I don't just mean the 1544 and the 1658 that this card is running. There's another layer of the clocks that you really need to pay more attention to than those bits. And if you go to GPU-Z, hit the sensors tab, and then where it says the boost clock, your core clock at the top, you can click your mouse button over the top of it and it will go min, max, and then average, and it will store the min, max or average there for you. Now what I do is I have a normal GPU-Z open, I have one open with the sensors, and I click all the ones that I want to do, like fan speed, temperature, memory, all that sort of thing, and I have those on maximum. And then I have another one open which I have just the core speed at the top, and I click that until it says average, because really with these cars we want to know what the maximum and the average are, because that does tell us a lot about what's going on underneath the hood with the cards as well. So with the MSI, like I said, it's listed as being 1544 and then 1658. But then what happens is the nVidia GPU Boost 3 kicks in, and it actually overclocks the card for you. So when people say, oh, I only got an extra 50 megahertz out of my 1080, that's because it's probably already overclocked itself by 300 megahertz in the first place. But people don't look at this bit, and it's probably the most important bit. So with the MSI, the peak that we got was 1949, and then the average that we got was 1854. Now, to put this into context, that's actually the lowest of the 1080 Ti's that I've had through the door so far. I have only done 2 others, but the problem is I have in the official waiting list to be done right now another 3, which is why I probably shouldn't be doing this now, because it's going to annoy a lot of other people, but this is one of the reasons why I've done a quick review on this, so that you guys can get to see it. So the problem is, with the average, which is one I pay most attention to, the ones that I've done already with the Gigabyte and the Acer Strix. Now the Gigabyte, the non-extreme version, was 1999 megahertz average, and the Strix was pumping out a 2038 average. So that then when we go in to have a quick look at some gaming results, which was Deus Ex and then Gears of War, I did those in 1440 and 4K, because I don't think you're going to be spending £800 on a graphics card if you're still rocking a HD monitor. But with those, it kind of fit in where I would have expected to as well. And you also need to remember that as of today, which is looking at my smartwatch, the 3rd of May, it was the latest driver on the nVidia website, but I forget the actual number. So it kind of performed where I would expect it to. But obviously, one of the things that you can do with this would be eke it up a little bit more with an overclock. And I did manage to get 1950 out of the average in the end with a manual overclock, but it obviously does mean that you have to go in there and fiddle around with it, whereas with the other ones I didn't have to do that. But with overclocking, the other thing that you do need to remember is it's always going to depend on the silicon lottery. So my card may do that, your one may do more, your one may do less. It's a little bit woo. One thing I will say though is that if you are thinking about overclocking one of these manually, don't normally need to play around with the actual voltage slider too much. It's normally the power percentage slider, and you can get a little bit more out of them with that. Don't go wanging them all the way up though, because at the end of the day, adding that in is going to create more temperatures. Now, as I've said, I love the cooler on this, and I did get a maximum of 72 degrees when I abused it with Unigine, and that was with a 4K with an 8x AA, and it was looping for 2 hours. So it's kind of a gaming related test in that it's fairly consistent, but it's got lots of levels where it's going up and down and stuff like that. So 72 degrees. When I did strip the card and I took it apart, there was an awful lot of thermal paste on it, and I do mean an awful lot. It was literally ganked all over it. I think someone had used an entire syringe and just emptied it in there. It was quite liquidy type thermal paste as well. So what I ended up doing was repasting it after I'd finished the strip down, and I rerun the tests again, even though I wasn't meant to be taking too much time on this stuff, and it actually went down to 68 degrees. So the cooler is very, very good. And the other thing to remember as well is the fans don't really spin up very much, and it stays really, really quiet. So overall, the thing that I said to you earlier on about replacing the thermal paste, not avoiding your warranty, is a really good point to keep bringing up with the MSI cards, and that's across the range as well. It's an unwritten rule. They don't advertise it too much, but it is something that I've got from an MSI rep directly in the past. So, you know, you can blame me if you get any issues. They'll only knock you back if there's something broken because of you taking the cooler off. So my thoughts on the card are £800. It's fairly expensive. And by fairly expensive, I'm going to mix it in because there obviously are cards around this price point. But the red, I think we've got to the point now where I have to stand up to MSI and I have to say it's time to ditch the black and red, or at least make the black and red one the really cheap one. Because in all honesty, if you had this, they do a model below this which has got white rings around. If you made this bit white or really dark grey and these lights white or really dark grey, you'd probably end up selling more of them randomly because it would fit in with more systems. The red, I'm starting to think now, is really limited. So I think they need to have a bit of a kind of a refresh in the colouring and the branding with these cars. Now the cooler itself underneath is epic. I think it's just the aesthetics that are letting it down slightly. Now it's obviously their Gaming X card, which means there is probably going to be a Z that is going to come above it. Now if there is a Z that is going to come above it later, that's probably going to be the one that's going to come in with better clocks. But then normally the Z comes in with a higher price tag as well. I'd actually really like to see a titanium version of this because they do have a silver version of this card, which I think again would fit in with loads more systems. And I think probably that silvery type of sort of effect, if they were to make the silver bit that went round here a little bit darker, I would probably go with that and keep this cooler. And again, I think it would probably end up selling more because it would fit in more systems. My watch is going nuts. I need to remember to turn it on silent. Right. So at the end of the day, they asked me to do a quick review, and a quick review is what I've done, but I don't think I really needed to do much more with it because I think it was going to end up being a little bit more disappointing than anything else. I do think it's worth buying, but I do think that you do have to think long and hard about the fact that it is black and red, and is it going to fit in your system? Do you even care? The cooler and the cooling is great, but it's not particularly being stressed by those overclocks very much, and it is probably going to be ones for someone that wants to manually tweak with them a little bit more. But the problem with that is normally when you have to manually tweak with something, it's because it's cheaper. And this one kind of isn't, because you can pick up a 1080 Ti now from about $699, and this one's a whole £100 more. And like I said, I know you do get a much better cooler mixed in with that and higher than Founders Edition clocks. But when you mix the whole package in together, I think it is being slightly hampered by the colouring and those kind of lacklustre clocks when it's clearly capable of a little bit more. So, award-wise, I'm going to begrudgingly give it an approved. But by approved, I mean it's worth a look, but it's definitely not the best of the pack. So it does its job, it does its job well, it's just got some slight failings, and you guys are going to have to decide whether that is going to make it a card for you or a card to pass on. I wouldn't think about it too long and hard though. Whatever your gut says from what you've seen in this video, I would go with it. And sadly, if that means that you want one that's slightly quicker and you're not going to have to mess around with it, and you want a cooler that looks a little bit better, because let's face it, this one, it's getting a bit long in the tooth now, I'd stick with that. But anyway, this has been Tiny Tom Logan trying to do a short review, and I'm not going to know how long it is until the end, but you know, let's hope that it's less than an hour. Yeah, anyway, short review, mini review, whatever, yeah, dawn.